Ethan Sterling, a self-made millionaire, was known for his sharp business acumen and stoic demeanor. Despite his immense wealth and towering reputation, his life had become a hollow cycle of meetings, deals, and meticulously planned routines. His penthouse, perched high above the glittering city skyline, reflected his personality, sleek, modern, and devoid of warmth. It was a fortress of solitude where everything had its place, everything except genuine human connection. The only light in his otherwise sterile world came from Sophia Bennett, his housekeeper. Vibrant and hard-working, Sophia had a way of bringing life to the coldest corners of Ethan's penthouse. In her late 20s, with a head full of dreams and a heart that carried the memory of her late mother, she lived for moments of creativity and joy. Her evenings were spent sketching designs for the cafe she dreamed of opening, a cozy haven with warm lights, mismatched chairs, and the aroma of fresh coffee and pastries filling the air. Sophia's presence was unassuming, yet comforting. Her laughter had a way of filling the silence, and her sharp wit brought a subtle energy to Ethan's otherwise dull existence. But he had never thought much about her beyond her role until one crisp autumn evening. The city twinkled below like a sea of stars as Ethan stared out from the floor-to-ceiling windows of his living room. His jaw tightened as he paced, frustration evident in the sharpness of his steps. His business partner had just cancelled at the last minute for an important gala dinner, an event critical to sealing a multi-million-dollar deal. The gala was less about celebration and more about appearances, a stage where impressions mattered as much as decisions. Attending alone would raise questions. He needed someone by his side, and time was running out. As his gaze swept the room, it landed on Sophia, who was arranging fresh flowers on the marble countertop. She hummed softly to herself, oblivious to the storm brewing in Ethan's mind. "Sophia!" he called, his voice cutting through the stillness. She straightened, startled by the urgency in his tone. "Yes, Mr. Sterling?" she asked, turning to him with her usual composure, though the flicker of curiosity in her eyes betrayed her surprise. Ethan hesitated for a moment. The thought forming in his mind was unconventional, almost absurd. But as he considered his options, it didn't seem as ridiculous as it first had. "How would you like to attend a gala dinner tonight?" he asked. Sophia blinked, her hands pausing mid-air. "Me?" she echoed, her voice a mixture of disbelief and confusion. "Mr. Sterling, I'm your housekeeper. Surely you—" "You're more than that," he interrupted, his grey eyes meeting hers. There was an unusual softness in his gaze, a rare vulnerability that caught her off guard. "You're smart, articulate, and presentable. I don't have time to find anyone else. Please, say yes." Sophia's heart raced. The idea of attending such an event, a world so far removed from her own, felt surreal. Yet something in Ethan's tone, the sincerity and quiet urgency, made her reconsider. After a long pause, she nodded. "All right, I'll do it." A hint of relief flickered across Ethan's face, though he quickly masked it. "Good. I'll have a gown sent up, and a stylist will arrive shortly to help you prepare." The hours that followed were a whirlwind for Sophia. She barely recognized herself as the stylist worked their magic, wrapping her in a sleek black gown that shimmered like starlight. Her chestnut hair was styled into elegant waves, framing her face perfectly, and subtle makeup highlighted her natural beauty. As she glanced at her reflection, her breath caught. She had always considered herself ordinary, but tonight she looked anything but. Descending the grand staircase to the living room, Sophia's heart thudded with nervous anticipation. Ethan was waiting at the base of the stairs, dressed in a sharp tuxedo that accentuated his broad shoulders and commanding presence. When he looked up and saw her, something in his expression shifted. For a moment, Ethan forgot how to speak. Gone was the housekeeper who quietly managed his home. Standing before him was a woman of elegance and confidence, a vision that made his carefully controlled world tilt. "You'll do perfectly," he finally said, his voice steady though his gaze lingered longer than usual. Offering his arm, he added, "Shall we?" Sophia hesitated, her hand hovering just above his. She took a steadying breath, then placed her hand lightly on his arm. As they stepped into the limousine waiting outside, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. The gala was held at the renowned Rosewood Hotel, its grand ballroom transformed into a shimmering wonderland of crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. The hum of polite conversation filled the air, interspersed with the soft strains of a string quartet. Waiters in crisp uniforms weaved between the elegantly dressed attendees, offering champagne flutes and bite-sized delicacies. It was a world defined by opulence, where every smile concealed an agenda and every handshake carried unspoken negotiations. Ethan Sterling's arrival commanded attention. His reputation as a sharp, no-nonsense businessman preceded him, and heads turned as he entered the room. But tonight, the spotlight shifted to the woman walking beside him. Sophia, draped in the sleek black gown, exuded a quiet grace that was impossible to ignore. Her nervous energy was palpable, but she masked it with a practiced poise. Her eyes, wide with wonder, took in the dazzling surroundings, though she remained acutely aware of the whispers trailing in her wake. Who is she? A new socialite. She's stunning. Ethan, sensing her unease, leaned in slightly and whispered, "Relax. You belong here as much as anyone else." His words, though simple, carried a reassurance that steadied her nerves. She offered him a small smile, her grip on his arm relaxing as they moved deeper into the crowd. The dinner was served at a long, elegantly adorned table where business magnates, influencers, and politicians mingled. As the courses were presented with artistic precision, Sophia found herself seated across from Victor Crane, one of Ethan's most notorious rivals. With his silver hair and sharp, assessing gaze, Victor was the kind of man who thrived on making others uncomfortable. "Miss," Victor began, his voice dripping with curiosity. "Bennett," Sophia replied, meeting his gaze with a polite smile. Victor raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "And what do you do, Miss Bennett?" Sophia hesitated for a fraction of a second, then straightened her posture. "I'm a housekeeper, but I've also studied culinary arts and dream of opening my own cafe." The table fell silent, the hum of nearby conversations fading into the background. Victor chuckled, the sound low and condescending. A housekeeper with aspirations. How quaint. Sophia's smile remained intact, but her eyes sparkled with quiet determination. "It's fascinating, isn't it, Mr. Crane, how passion fuels success. I imagine your business started with a spark of an idea, too." The subtle challenge in her tone caught Victor off guard, and a flicker of respect crossed his features. Across the table, Ethan suppressed a grin, impressed by her composure. Throughout the evening, Sophia's charm and intelligence began to shine. She asked thoughtful questions, laughed at the right moments, and shared insights that impressed even the most skeptical attendees. One of Ethan's international clients, a renowned hotelier, leaned forward during the conversation. "Miss Bennett, your vision for a cafe sounds remarkable. Have you considered integrating cultural themes into your menu? People today value authenticity." Sophia's eyes lit up. That's an excellent idea. My mother loved recipes from around the world, and it would be a wonderful way to honor her memory while offering something unique. The client nodded, clearly impressed. You have a keen sense of creativity. If you ever need advice on hospitality, feel free to reach out. Ethan observed the exchange, a sense of pride swelling within him. Sophia wasn't just holding her own, she was thriving. As the gala wound down, Sophia stepped out onto the balcony for a moment of solitude. The cool night air was a welcome relief after the intensity of the evening. She gazed out at the city lights, her thoughts racing. She had entered this world as an outsider, yet somehow she had found her place within it, if only for a night. Enjoying the view? Ethan's voice broke her reverie. She turned to find him standing beside her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. It's beautiful, she said, but overwhelming. You handled it better than most, he replied. Better than I expected, honestly. Sophia chuckled softly. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or an admission of doubt. It's both, Ethan admitted, a rare smile tugging at his lips. You exceeded every expectation tonight. Her cheeks flushed, but she met his gaze. Thank you for trusting me with this. Ethan hesitated, his next words uncharacteristically vulnerable. You're not just my housekeeper, Sophia. You're more than that. The weight of his statement hung in the air, and for a moment Sophia didn't know how to respond. But before she could find the words, a voice called Ethan back inside, breaking the moment. As they left the gala together, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that the evening had marked the beginning of something far greater than either of them could anticipate. The limousine glided through the quiet streets of the city as Ethan and Sophia shared a rare silence. The glow of passing streetlights illuminated their faces intermittently, but neither spoke, lost in their thoughts. You were incredible tonight, Ethan said finally, breaking the stillness. His voice was low, almost hesitant. Sophia glanced at him, a soft blush creeping up her cheeks. I just did what felt right, but thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. It wasn't trust, it was instinct, and I was right. The conversation lingered in the air as the car pulled up to Ethan's penthouse. He escorted Sophia to the door, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. Good night, Sophia, he said, his voice holding a note of something unspoken. Good night, Mr. Sterling, she replied, stepping inside. The days following the gala brought a subtle shift in their dynamic. Where once their exchanges were brief and professional, they now held a warmth neither had anticipated. Ethan began seeking Sophia's company more often, asking about her day, her interests, her dreams. He listened intently, intrigued by the layers of her personality he had never noticed before. Sophia, in turn, found herself drawn to Ethan's quieter moments. Beneath his stoic exterior, she discovered a man burdened by the weight of his success, a man who had spent so long building walls around himself that he'd forgotten how to let anyone in. One morning, over a casual breakfast, Ethan surprised her with a question. If you could design your cafe, what would it look like? Sophia blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Why do you want to know? He shrugged, feigning nonchalance. Call it curiosity. Her eyes lit up as she began to describe her vision. It would be warm and inviting, with wooden tables and soft lighting. The air would always smell of fresh coffee and baked goods. I'd have a small library corner with mismatched chairs where people could lose themselves in books, and maybe even a space for local artists to showcase their work. As she spoke, Ethan watched her intently, captivated by the passion in her voice. For the first time in years, he felt inspired by someone else's dream, a dream so far removed from boardrooms and profit margins, yet infinitely more meaningful. Their connection deepened during quiet evenings in the penthouse. Ethan began sharing pieces of his own story, memories of a childhood spent in a cold, loveless household, the relentless pressure of living up to his family's legacy, and the emptiness that had followed even his greatest successes. Sophia listened with a quiet empathy that made Ethan feel seen in a way he never had before. In return, she shared her own struggles, the loss of her mother, the sacrifices she had made to support her younger brother, and the quiet resilience that had carried her through. One evening, as they stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city, Ethan broke the comfortable silence. "You make it look easy," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. "Balancing everything, staying hopeful. How do you do it?" Sophia smiled softly. "It's not about balance, Ethan. It's about finding moments that matter and holding on to them. Like this one." Ethan's gaze lingered on her, a rare vulnerability flickering in his grey eyes. In that moment, he realized that Sophia hadn't just stepped into his world. She had begun to reshape it. News of Sophia's presence at the gala spread like wildfire. The media, ever hungry for a sensational story, latched on to the mystery woman by Ethan Sterling's side. Tabloids speculated wildly. Ethan Sterling's secret date, a Cinderella story, or scandal? Others delved into Sophia's background, painting her as a social climber and even a gold digger. Headlines screamed accusations, and online forums buzzed with heated discussions. Sophia tried to ignore it at first. She buried herself in her routine, focusing on keeping the penthouse spotless and staying out of Ethan's way. But the whispers grew louder, and the weight of public scrutiny became unbearable. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages from old acquaintances, some supportive, others cruelly judgmental. Social media turned into a battlefield, with every comment cutting deeper than the last. Ethan's board of directors wasn't immune to the gossip either. During a heated meeting, Robert Grayson, one of the most senior and conservative members, addressed the issue directly. "Ethan, this situation with the housekeeper is becoming a liability. The press is running wild and investors are asking questions about your judgment." Ethan's jaw tightened, his temper barely restrained. "Sophia's presence at one event doesn't affect my ability to lead this company." "It's not about her," Robert countered, his tone sharp. "It's about perception. And right now, the perception is that you're reckless, that you're jeopardizing the company's image over a personal whim." Ethan's hands clenched into fists under the table. "This company's success has never relied on anyone else's perception, Robert. It's built on results, and I've delivered those consistently." The tension in the room was palpable. Board members exchanged uneasy glances, their silence more damning than any words. The message was clear. If Ethan didn't act to quell the rumors, the company's reputation, and perhaps his leadership, could suffer. Sophia became increasingly withdrawn. She could see the strain the situation was placing on Ethan, though he tried to shield her from it. She felt responsible, even if none of it was her fault. The walls of the penthouse, which once felt like a refuge, now seemed to close in around her. One evening, after hours of restless pacing, she made a decision. Late that night, she sat at the small desk in her modest room and began writing a letter. Her hands trembled as she poured her heart onto the page, thanking Ethan for everything he had done for her and for trusting her in ways no one else ever had. But she made it clear she couldn't stay. She couldn't be the reason his reputation or his company suffered. By morning, the letter lay neatly folded on Ethan's desk. She packed her belongings quietly, her heart heavy with regret, and slipped away before he woke. When Ethan found the letter, his heart sank. His usually composed demeanor shattered as he read her words. Anger, frustration, and an overwhelming sense of loss consumed him. He wanted to storm after her, to demand she explain why she had left without even talking to him. But for the first time in years, Ethan didn't know what to do. For days, he threw himself into his work, burying his emotions under a mountain of meetings and paperwork. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the emptiness that had settled over his life. Sophia's absence was like a wound that refused to heal. The penthouse felt colder, quieter, and unbearably lonely. Every corner of the space reminded him of her laughter, her warmth, the way she had filled the void he hadn't even realized existed. Ethan sat by the window one night, the city lights stretching out endlessly before him. The faint hum of traffic below was the only sound in the otherwise silent penthouse. He swirled the whiskey in his glass, his mind replaying every moment with Sophia. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. Sophia was gone, and with her, the fragile sense of happiness he had only just begun to understand. And for the first time, Ethan Sterling, the man who had built an empire with unrelenting determination, wondered if he had just lost the most important thing in his life. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the letter Sophia had left behind. Her words were etched into his mind, each line a painful reminder of the emptiness her absence had created. Days passed as he wrestled with his emotions, torn between respecting her decision and the overwhelming need to bring her back. But Ethan Sterling wasn't a man who gave up easily, not in business, and certainly not in matters of the heart. Tracking Sophia down wasn't easy. She had deliberately retreated to a quiet corner of the city, taking up a job at a small cafe. Immersing herself in the simplicity she had always known, Sophia tried to move on. Yet her thoughts often drifted back to Ethan, the way he had looked at her, the moments they had shared, and the connection she couldn't forget. One rainy afternoon, as Sophia wiped down the cafe tables, the door chimed. She glanced up, her breath catching, as Ethan stepped inside. His tailored suit was damp from the rain, his hair slightly disheveled, but his expression was resolute. His piercing grey eyes found hers immediately, unwavering. "Ethan," she whispered, disbelief and nervousness in her voice. He crossed the room in a few strides, stopping just short of her. "We need to talk," he said, his tone firm yet gentle. Sophia hesitated, her heart pounding. "There's nothing to talk about. I left because—" "Because you thought you were protecting me," he interrupted. "But you weren't. You were running away, and you left me to deal with the mess you left behind." Her eyes widened, guilt flickering across her face. "I didn't want to ruin your life, Ethan, your reputation, your career. I couldn't be the reason you lost everything." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "And you think I care about any of that without you?" Sophia's defenses crumbled, her hands trembling as she clutched the cloth she'd been holding. "I'm just a housekeeper, Ethan. I don't belong in your world." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folder. "Then maybe it's time we created a world of our own." With trembling hands, Sophia opened the folder. Inside was a lease for a charming space downtown, a space perfectly suited to become her dream cafe. Her breath caught as she read the terms, all arranged in her favor. "Ethan, I can't," she began, but he silenced her with a gentle touch to her hand. "You can, and you will," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not doing this out of pity, Sophia. I'm doing this because I believe in you, in your dreams, and because I can't imagine my life without you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked up at him. "Why would you do this for me?" His faint smile was warm, filled with sincerity. "Because you showed me what truly matters, and because I love you." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, without hesitation, Sophia stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "I love you too," she whispered, her voice breaking. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Sophia worked together to bring her dream to life. The cafe, aptly named The Hearth, became a labor of love. Sophia poured her heart into its design, crafting a space that exuded warmth and community. Ethan handled logistics with the precision that had defined his career. Their partnership deepened as they shared laughter, late nights, and moments of quiet connection. On the day of the grand opening, The Hearth buzzed with life. Friends, family, and curious locals filled the cozy space, marveling at its charm. The air was rich with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and pastries, and the hum of conversation created an atmosphere of belonging. Sophia stood behind the counter, her eyes scanning the lively room. A mixture of pride and disbelief shone on her face. Ethan approached, holding a cup of coffee. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice low and intimate. She smiled, her eyes glistening. "It's everything I ever wanted. Thank you, Ethan, for everything." He leaned closer, his gaze tender. "No, Sophia. Thank you for changing my life." Their eyes met, and the bustling room seemed to fade away, leaving only the warmth of their connection. What had begun with an unexpected invitation had brought them to this moment, a place where love, dreams, and purpose intertwined seamlessly. Part 6. A new chapter. The weeks following the opening of The Hearth were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. The cafe quickly became a beloved spot in the community, attracting patrons who came not only for its rich coffee and freshly baked pastries, but also for the warmth and charm that seemed to emanate from the space itself. Sophia thrived in her role. Her natural kindness and passion for creating a welcoming environment made every visitor feel like family. Regular customers began to fill the cafe, drawn to more than just the ambiance. They came for the connection Sophia had so effortlessly fostered. Ethan, though still managing his sprawling business empire, found himself spending more time at The Hearth. While he lent his expertise to back-end operations, ensuring everything ran smoothly, he cherished the simpler moments. Watching Sophia light up the room with her smile, seeing her passion in action, and hearing the laughter that echoed through the cafe, brought a joy he hadn't realized he was missing. One quiet evening, after the last customer had left and the cafe lights had dimmed, Ethan and Sophia sat together by the fireplace in the corner. The soft glow of the flames cast warm shadows across the room, and the faint scent of cinnamon lingered in the air. Sophia leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder, letting out a contented sigh. "I never imagined my dream would look like this," she said softly. "What do you mean?" he asked, his arm draping gently around her. "I thought it would be just me, struggling to keep a little cafe afloat. I never expected to have this, to share it with someone who believes in me as much as you do." Ethan pressed a kiss to the top of her head, his voice tender. "You made this happen, Sophia. I just gave you the tools. Everything else, your vision, your hard work, your heart, that's all you." Her cheeks flushed, but her smile was radiant. "Still, I couldn't have done it without you." Their relationship deepened with each passing day. Ethan, once guarded and stoic, began to open up in ways he never had before. He shared stories of his childhood, of the immense pressure he had faced growing up in a world that prized success above all else. With Sophia's quiet empathy and unwavering support, those memories began to lose their weight. In turn, Sophia shared more of her life, the loss of her mother, the sacrifices she had made for her younger brother, and the small but profound joys that had carried her through the toughest times. Their evenings were filled with laughter, moments of vulnerability, and the unshakable bond of partnership. One evening, as they strolled through the park near Sophia's apartment, Ethan suddenly stopped. She turned to him, her brow furrowing with curiosity. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Ethan smiled, a rare hint of nervousness flickering in his usually composed demeanor. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I've been carrying this with me for weeks," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "waiting for the right moment." Sophia's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal an elegant diamond ring that sparkled in the soft glow of the park's lights. But it wasn't the ring that captivated her. It was the love and vulnerability in Ethan's gaze. "Sophia Bennett," he said, taking her hand in his, "you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've shown me what it means to live, to love, and to dream again. I don't want to face another day without you by my side. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Sophia's eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. She nodded, her voice trembling, as she whispered, "Yes." 1,000 times yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger with a quiet reverence, and she threw her arms around him, laughing and crying all at once. As they held each other, the world seemed to fade, leaving only the promise of a future they would build together. Their engagement marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with excitement and possibility. As they planned their wedding, they also began discussing the future of the hearth. They envisioned expanding the cafe into new locations, creating spaces where other dreamers could find inspiration and opportunity. Through every challenge, every triumph, and every quiet moment, Ethan and Sophia's love only grew stronger. What had started as an unexpected meeting had blossomed into a partnership built on trust, respect, and a shared belief in the power of dreams. Together they embraced the journey ahead, ready to face whatever the future might hold, knowing they had found in each other the greatest gift of all. With their engagement marking the start of a new chapter, Ethan and Sophia poured their hearts into both their personal and professional lives. Their wedding planning, though intimate and understated, was filled with joy and excitement. True to their style, they envisioned a ceremony that celebrated love and community rather than extravagance. Meanwhile, the hearth became a thriving cornerstone of the neighborhood, drawing in regulars who cherished not only its cozy ambience, but also the welcoming spirit Sophia had cultivated. Ethan and Sophia soon realized that the hearth had the potential to be more than just a cafe. It could be a movement. One evening, after closing up the cafe, Sophia and Ethan sat together at a corner table, their notebooks spread out before them. Sophia sketched designs while Ethan reviewed logistics on his tablet. "What if we open a second location?" Sophia suggested, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "But this time it's more than a cafe. We could include a training space for aspiring bakers and baristas, people who need a second chance or a place to grow." Ethan looked up, his expression thoughtful. "A mentorship program," he mused. "We could partner with local organizations, create a sustainable model, and maybe even turn it into a non-profit wing of the business. Sophia beamed. Exactly, a place where people can come to learn, create, and feel like they belong. Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand. I love the way you think, Sophia. Let's do it. Their vision quickly took shape. Together they scouted locations, met with architects, and reached out to local organizations to build partnerships. Sophia's passion and Ethan's strategic mind made them an unstoppable team. They worked late into the nights, balancing wedding plans with their expanding dreams. Amid the chaos, they found small, meaningful moments that kept them grounded. A quiet dinner on the balcony, a spontaneous dance in the kitchen, or a walk through the park where Ethan first proposed. These moments reminded them that their love was the foundation of everything they were building. The wedding day arrived on a crisp spring afternoon. The ceremony was held in the courtyard behind the hearth, adorned with flowers and fairy lights. Friends, family, and neighbors gathered to celebrate the couple who had brought so much warmth to their lives. As Sophia walked down the aisle, Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. She looked radiant, her smile brighter than the sunlight that filtered through the trees. When she reached him, he took her hands, his voice steady but full of emotion. Sophia, you've given me more than I ever thought possible. You've shown me love, hope, and the beauty of a shared dream. I promise to stand by you, to support you, and to cherish you every day for the rest of our lives. Sophia's voice wavered as she responded, her eyes glistening with tears. Ethan, you've changed my world in ways I never imagined. You've believed in me, lifted me, and loved me for who I am. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your biggest supporter, always. As they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a kiss, the crowd erupted into cheers. The celebration that followed was filled with laughter, dancing, and an overwhelming sense of joy. The newlyweds returned to their work with renewed energy and focus. The second location of the hearth, with its attached training space, opened 6 months later to great success. It quickly became a beacon of hope and opportunity, a testament to what could be achieved with passion, determination, and love. Ethan and Sophia's story became an inspiration to many. People marveled at how a chance invitation to a gala had transformed not only their lives but also the lives of those around them. Through their partnership, they proved that true success wasn't measured by wealth or status, but by the impact they had on others and the love they shared.